Verifying we're live on Facebook, guys. If you're, as soon as I verify, we officially, it says we are live. So I'm just verifying, starting the program soon. Yes, we're live. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for joining us in another CAIR-Florida lunch hour in our elections 2020 edition. This is another program we're hosting, this time with one of a candidate that is a young professional woman from South Florida. Her name is Noor Fawzy, and she's running for the Coral Springs City Commission seat. We will be learning about what she has done in her career, how is her experience running as a female young minority candidate here in South Florida, what challenges she's still probably facing or will be facing if she wins, and to tell us about how her city is run and the projects that she may have that might be of the interest of our community and our audience. So welcome, Noor. And welcome also to Norma. Norma Henning is our government affairs coordinator. She's an attorney, and she will be also co-hosting this program. Norma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our lunch session. So we're very looking forward to chatting with Noor. And I guess my first question to Noor would be, have you always been interested in politics, or what made you interested in talk a little bit about your background? I mean, you have leadership experience, but I didn't see politics. So
yeah, so I've always had an interest in politics, even if it was just reading about politics or talking with my friends about politics. I'll be honest with you, I would have never believed that I would one day run to represent the city of Coral Springs. I moved to the city when I was 9 years old. I think all I cared about back then was basketball. But as I got older, I developed a love and an appreciation for the city. And I feel like I have a really good grasp on, what's going on, and feel that I'm fully capable to really help Coral Springs take the lead on many of the issues that not only face Coral Springs, but other municipalities. And I think that kind of leadership is needed in this day and age. And feel that I'm fully capable to really...
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, thank you. Sorry, there was an echo. I was trying to finish listening to you. So city council, then basically you're a hometown girl, grown up in the city, and care about the community, and decided to join city council. So how many city council I'm sorry, I keep calling it a council because I'm confused. We're on my side of the state, we call them city councils. So is this the same thing? City commission, same thing?
Yeah, people tend to talk about the same thing when they say council versus commission. There might be some variations in how the commission is run and how it runs the city, but for the most part, the council or the commission is really like the governing body for the city. But yeah, here in Coral Springs, we call it commission, yeah.
And how many members are there?
So we have a mayor and 4 commissioners, and they all have voting power. The mayor, to me, is like a ceremonial figure in the city, but he does have voting power. And his voting power is equal to that of the commissioners.
Okay.
There are some cities, Noor, that where the mayor is elected among the commissioners, and another cities where people directly elect the mayor to the position of mayor, right? How does Coral Springs work?
Yeah, so in Coral Springs, the mayoral position is an elected position.
Mm.
The mayor will serve 2-year terms. And so every 2 years, the mayor will be up for election as long as he or she is challenged. Um, there was a case here in Coral Springs where our former mayor had passed away, bless his heart. And at that point, we had to figure out whether we wanted to appoint someone to serve as an interim mayor, or if we just wanted to move ahead and have an election. And we decided that we were going to have an election.
Mm. Mm. Interesting. Uh, Noor, what tell us a little bit about yourself, your education and your work experience for those who don't know you.
Sure. So I attended Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, Florida. I majored in political science. At that point, I had to decide, did I want to go into diplomacy, which was, one of my interests, or law school. And I felt like law school was the more practical option. So I went to law school. I attended law school at Florida International University College of Law. I got my JD, took the bar exam, and now I work as a civil litigation attorney at one of the statewide law firms here in South Florida.
So you're not afraid of a little debate. Let's put it this
No,
way.
not at all. It's kind of cutthroat, so you have to be prepared, but it does teach you to be strong. So I really appreciate the experience that comes with being a litigator.
And how many co-competitors do you have? And is there debate? Did you guys engage in debate?
At this point, there haven't been any candidate forums or debates because the seat that I'm running for is not it's a nonpartisan seat, and there's no primary election. So my election is in November 3rd. It seems like everyone's kind of waiting to get the primary elections out of the way before they start inviting, city candidates out to forums and things like that.
Except yes. we're different. We just want to.
But you're different. Yeah, CAIR's different.
But so anyway, actually, just as a side note, CAIR, we are a 501c3 nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse any particular candidate. So we invited everyone who is running for this race. Unfortunately, the others, didn't respond to us in time to properly advertise with flyers. So we're having another event on Monday. With some of your co-competitors or candidates running for the same seat. So I don't know if you want to tune in again or just listen, but we're looking forward to hearing from everyone so that the city, we can fulfill our mission to basically inform the community of their options and just really hear what's on candidates' minds and how they feel like they can make a difference. What are the major issues in Coral Springs that you would like to be a part of?
Yeah, so I would say that there's 3 main issues. I think that the economy, by and large, is the most important issue facing the residents of Coral Springs, especially in light of the pandemic. One of the more immediate issues that we have to face as a city is a $5 million budget shortfall that we're going to have to figure out. I think we have a big budget. Coral Springs is a large city, so I think that as long as the commissioners are keeping a watchful eye over how money is spent, then we can figure out how to address that shortfall without necessarily having to raise taxes on the residents. Infrastructure is very important in Coral Springs. Like I said, this is a large city. We have more than 130,000 people living in the city, and with time, the condition of the infrastructure starts to catch up on you. So I think that we need some major infrastructure reform in Coral Springs. My campaign is actually proposing or going to propose an alternative street design for the city that will not only decrease traffic at our intersections, but that will also promote safer roads. So infrastructure is also very important. And then mental health is also extremely important here in Coral Springs. Especially in light of what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and also in light of the pandemic. I mean, a lot of people are on edge. And, you know, it's okay to feel that way. I think a lot of us are in that boat, but if we want to achieve violence prevention, which I think is certainly achievable, then, you know, we have to start with our youth, and, you know, we have to teach young people how to respond to the kinds of, you know, thoughts that lead one to either, you know, harm themselves or others. And so one of the big proposals that we're making is to implement cognitive behavioral therapy in the schools and to make it a required part of the K through 12 curriculum. If you can teach young people how to respond to these negative thought patterns, then you can achieve violence prevention. And if that wasn't true, then our mental health professionals would not now be writing about it.
Is that possible in the city, from the city government, or does that take county? I don't know, how does that work there with the interrelationship?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly would want to get the county and the state involved, because, you know, this is going to cost, you know, money, and, you know, I think that the state will certainly be able to help out with that. I think everybody needs to be involved if we want to come up with a comprehensive solution to, you know, achieve violence prevention. So other than that, I don't see it being an issue trying to get it implemented. It's also a school issue, so that, you know, the school board has to get involved and weigh in. But other than that, I think this is certainly achievable.
Noor, I'm sorry to interrupt, Norma. I have a question for Noor here. You know that the police reform topic, the racial justice issue that is so prevalent in today's public square discussion, is it part of the discussion among you candidates, and the correlation of you and what you will be offering your constituents, because everybody's worried. I believe that what in the number one priorities, people are worried about their health and their lives with the pandemic. But after that, the social justice, I believe, will come in a close second, and racial justice and police reform. How's the city in that discussion doing?
Well, the candidates and I have certainly been asked about the issue of police reform. And, you know, we're not only having discussions about it here in the city, but just recently the city had established a task force to, you know, review police policies and figure out, you know, how we can improve the way that policing is done, so that, you know, we can make sure that police officers are exercising the appropriate level of care and how they deal with residents day to day. You know, my position is pretty simple. There's always room for improvement. We just need to make sure that any proposals that are being put out there are being put by people who have some kind of law enforcement experience, whether they're police officers or even social workers and mental health professionals, which are also in the field working with police officers. So we need to make sure that we have the right people out there pushing for the right kinds of reforms, and the right kinds of reforms are going to be the ones that are specific to the needs of the city and not necessarily influenced by what may be happening outside of the city. But I think that the police department should, on its own, without necessarily being prompted by anyone, conduct a regular review of their policies and procedures to make sure that nothing is left out, and that that they are exercising the appropriate level of care in their day-to-day dealings with the residents.
Is there any claim at present from the residents to be an active participant on that relation with the police, and not being a passive participant when they just learn again how the police self-reform or self-approach their problems, or what is worse, self-police themselves? You see? And that is and that delicate balance is what is at stake in this broader discussion of racial justice and law enforcement and the correlation of law enforcement with the community. You, when I complain about police, it ends up on you investigating yourself
Yeah.
and rarely taking action that is significant, not only in the discipline part, but to proactively transform, because I believe what the people are looking for is for a transformation of that police citizen relation, for the police to really be felt as an employee of the taxpayers, not as an oppressor of the taxpayers who pay, ironically, pay their salary, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That transformation, is that an issue in the city, or not? Are they walking towards doing something on that regards?
Like as far as allowing civilians to have a say in police reform.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I will say that Coral Springs is generally very receptive to, uh, issues that are brought by the residents. I don't consider the city or even the police department here to be too resistant to calls for change. In part, that's why you do have civilians that serve on this new task force. But again,
There's a task force.
Sorry?
There is a task force.
Yeah, it's a recently established task force, which I think kind of proves my point that the city is pretty receptive to, calls for change. But, my biggest concern is we want to make sure that we have, the right people calling for the right kind of reform, because public safety it's a sensitive issue. And, we do need to listen to activists, and racial justice is very important. But again, reform needs to be specific to what the needs of the city are.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have very ambitious goals in all of the the complexities, and you're very well aware. How is this set up? Is city? Oh, sorry, city commissioner. I keep wanting to say council. Is city commissioner a full-time position with an actual salary that allows you to focus on this, or are the candidates expected to carry on their professions simultaneously in order to make a living? How does that work?
Yeah, well, it is a part-time position with a part-time salary. That includes the mayor's position as well.
Wow.
So, I don't see myself, leaving my job as an attorney if I'm given the opportunity to serve as commissioner. So I would be doing it, both at the same time. But the city is very accommodating to the commissioners and their jobs, and so it should be able to work out.
Well, they would have to be in order to encourage professionals to join the council. It's just I find that surprising, though, given the size of the city and the complexities of the issues. Is that something that maybe the citizens of the city can get together and saying, hey, at least we should get some health insurance and a living wage for our councilmen or commissioners? But I mean, that's neither here nor there. I think one of the things I heard you say, though, about the a task force, and one of the things that I feel is missing from the debate is nuance and reason. And often, and that's why I'm very glad to hear you talk about, the different factors that go in, because, you had this movement, defund the police. And of course, then that, people are making it sound like it means, just take everything away from them so they don't have the resources to show up. When in reality, they are being faced, police officers are being faced with situations that really they shouldn't be faced with often. And it's a very difficult job, but I'm glad you see the nuance in these issues. I think that goes a long way to bringing the city together on that.
Yeah, public safety is a very sensitive issue, so you have to approach it with reason and also being practical about it.
That's great. And you see, and there is a city. Then there is a city. How big is the city police there in Coral Springs?
We have a pretty large police department. I think it's like something like close to 200 police officers, and they do a respectable job. I mean, I don't have anything against them. I think that we have a fine police chief and Chief Perry, very receptive to, calls for reform and things like that. But he's also very rational. And, I have a lot of confidence in our police department. I do think that they do a good job overall.
Good.
That's great.
It's good to hear. No, we don't hear that very often. What are those particular issues that Coral Springs is facing now under the pandemic? That because Coral Springs is compared to the rest of the cities in the state, is a very well-off city.
Yeah, relatively, yeah.
So a city like Coral Springs, what is it that citizens are more worried about in times like this? I guess obviously the economic impact of
Yeah.
the pandemic is hitting us all in every city, every state.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, what are what were the concerns before the pandemic? I just want to know that, and now obviously after the pandemic.
Well, the concerns before the pandemic, when it comes to economics and, fiscal policy, things like that is, are my taxes going to go up again? What new assessments are going to be levied against me? Are my existing assessments going to go up? Coral Springs is it's a primarily working class city. You have some affluent areas, but it's a predominantly working class city. So, taxes and things like that are always going to be at the top of everybody's mind. Especially now with the pandemic, we have this $5 million budget shortfall that we're going to have to address. And I personally think that we have more than enough money to address not only the basic needs of the city and the residents, but to go even beyond that. And so, like I said, as long as we're keeping a watchful eye on how we spend our tax dollars and that we're not, spending it on things that we can at least do away with for a few years, then, we can address this budget shortfall without necessarily having to raise people's taxes.
Hey Noor, you're from a generation. God bless your youth. You're from a generation that are naturally more concerned with the environment than my generation, for example. Is Coral Springs going green, or are taking any steps on going green? Is that something that is in the short side of the city to do something about the environment and better our environment?
Yeah, well, we're actually very close to the Everglades, so we have to care about the environment. And you certainly have calls within the city to have the city go more green. I think climate change is above all else an infrastructure issue. I don't think that the construction of the buildings in our city is necessarily strong enough for to combat the effects of climate change, whether it's sea level rise or whatever issue that concerns the environment. And so I think that future development and future construction in the city has to keep in mind the various environmental issues that come up here in South Florida. I think it can be addressed in large part by the infrastructure, not entirely, but in large part.
For example, the public transportation used in the city, does the city have anything to do with it, or that's something that is managed by the county?
Well, in large part, it's managed by the county. The county obviously has its routes that go, in and out of the city. But, there are opportunities for the city to get involved in that, whether it's, increasing access to buses for certain communities or things like that. There are many ways for the city to get involved in that area.
So speaking of county, though, you did work with the county for a while, and you have experience in dealing with the county on these kinds of transportation issues.
Yes. So I clerked at the Office of the County Attorney of Broward County, which is really the legal office for the county. And as a clerk, I researched and analyzed and studied any issue concerning the county, whether it was transportation, climate change, I mean, anything. So, that is, the kind of experience that I would bring as a city commissioner. You have to know what the city can do and what it can't do. And so jurisdiction is very important. And so, I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to work at that office. I think that it will prepare me in large part to take on the role of city commissioner in November.
Normally, when we invite, like Norma said in the beginning, for every program, we invite everybody that is running for that particular seat to have also a voice and an opportunity to be interviewed and speak. In your race is the first one that we got like all three opponents being interested in joining us in our next program. We're very excited about it as CAIR-Florida. I was talking to Norma before we started the program about how things have changed, how the candidates have interest in participating in these forums of civil rights groups or minority-led projects groups so the candidates are listening more to those movements that are more grounded in the places where there are needs, in identified needs and social injustice and poverty in their respective cities. Have you felt that? Have you felt that street wanting to interact with you and listen from you? Hey, what is it that you need to offer us? Is that happening even with this pandemic social distancing thing?
Yeah. I would be surprised if none of the candidates, accepted your invitation to come and talk to you. I think you kind of have to. But I don't know. I just think as a candidate, if I understood your question, you kind of have to be prepared to address anything that comes your way. Mm-hmm. And you should be prepared to talk to everybody. As a candidate, you have to be tolerant, you have to be accepting. We have a pretty sizable Muslim community in Coral Springs. Maybe that has something to do with it. But in general, you need to talk to everybody. You need to understand the interests of every community. It's part of being a good elected official.
Mm-hmm. Are there any issues where all candidates coincide that, we all need, that is a problem in our city, and everybody is offering an approach to that particular problem where all of you coincide that is an identifiable problem in the city?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. At this point, it's kind of hard to tell because I haven't really seen any specific policy proposals put out by the other candidates. I guess that kind of makes us different because, I wanted my campaign to be very policy oriented. I'm not really here to talk to people with, vague language. I want people to know exactly what I stand for and what they're voting for when they're voting for me in November. But generally, from what I've seen in other races in previous years, infrastructure is very important in Coral Springs. The economy is very important. The environment is important. So those are areas where, you're typically going to see a lot of agreement from the candidates as far as what we need to do and how we can get there.
Hey, I'm a biker. I ride my bike on the weekends. I mean the pedal bike, not the motorcycle. Yeah. How's Coral Springs doing? Because Coral Springs happens to be in my vicinity. I'm not a resident of Coral Springs. I used to be a resident of Coral Springs. I do frequently ride my bike in Coral Springs. How's the Coral Springs doing with the bike lanes in the streets that are jurisdiction of Coral Springs?
Well, we have bike lanes. You'll see them, throughout the city. I tend to be very concerned about the safety of the bikers, because they're so close to the road, as you see. We actually have some trails where residents can go and ride their bikes. There's an area out near the Sawgrass Expressway. It's not necessarily a paved area. It's like more of a rocky area, but you see, residents out there all the time riding their bikes, and it gets really beautiful, especially, as the sun is setting. So, there are definitely opportunities for residents to ride their bikes, but of course you always want to be safe, especially when you're out on the roads.
Is there any dream project for the city? Some cities have a dream project of having, I don't know, a new city center, or I don't know, a big project that is just in the long-term project for the city rather than in the next 4 or 8 years, but a long-term project. Is there any long-term projects that you envision the city embracing?
Yeah, I could talk about two of them. The first is the Cornerstone Project, which is the new development project that you're going to see in the area where the walk is. I don't know if you remember the walk area.
Yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah. And, we can expect to have a movie theater and a bunch of different, shops and businesses for the residents. We're also going to have some residential areas. That's really the biggest development project that you're going to see happening in the city. And, many people are excited about that. I'm excited about that. It's part of creating a new downtown in Coral Springs, which sounds kind of weird because, Coral Springs is like a suburb. It's not like Fort Lauderdale or anything like that, but a lot of residents are excited about that. And that's pretty much etched in stone. It's just a matter of time before that big old building in that area is knocked down and construction begins.
That's exciting.
We have a lot of low-income housing in Coral Springs, which I think is great. I think one of the worst things to see happen is for someone to be living, without a roof over their heads. But I'd like to see the city, somehow work with the developer community in the city and take, the low-income housing and to rehabilitate it so that so that those areas kind of look more like what the city looks like. The city has its own unique look. We have a very unique identity as a city, and it's part of the reason why so many families like to move here. I'd like to see us, work with the developer community to improve the condition of low-income housing. And I think that if you negotiate things well enough, you can even get them to do it on their own dime.
Yeah, it is certainly possible, and that's something that we elevate and dignify those lower income communities to always be kept at the standard of the city and never be relegated to an area where later you will see the developers approaching, but not with the spirit of helping the community and beautifying and strengthening the community, but rather to do a gentrification project there. So that's something that the city, I'm glad you have it, the city have it as in their scope as something very important to deal with, because I believe that's the death sentence of the cities, is when you allow the gentrification to take place and just disregard the working class as part of the people entitled to enjoy the what the city as a city has to offer them. Right?
Definitely.
And it's happening in so many places, especially here in South Florida. And I would hate that to be happening or spreading to other counties, right, and to the suburbs, where like the city you're hoping to represent. Norma.
Yeah, actually, I've been listening to this, and then of course, I'm on the other side of Florida, so I know very little about the specific issues. I've been to Coral Springs, but you know, the whole trend, I think, in the United States now for, you know, suburbs or bedroom towns or whatever you want to call it, is that people are spending a whole lot more time there. You know, or even during the day. So let's say the city of Miami, you know, I mean, you can see by the traffic, people are driving or used to be driving down there to the big office buildings. They spend all day, and then, you know, if they're lucky, they get to get home, you know, in time to have dinner with their families. The day is over. The only time they spend in their cities usually was the weekend.
Yeah.
That's changing because, you know, families are now spending a lot more time, you know, near where they live, and people are working from home. And, you know, how is the city dealing with that? Because I think that could invigorate the city. I mean, in a great way, where all of a sudden there are like more people doing little stores, or you know, having local merchants, you know, spring up, or it could overwhelm the city. How is that happening in Coral Springs?
Well, I think that's a wonderful trend that we're seeing in the suburbs. Um, I haven't seen any specific policy proposals being put out by the city, but it would definitely be a good idea to do that, just because many of the social problems that we deal with are caused by people, you know, having to work, you know, too far away from the city. Um, you know, the more you could do within the city, the better. But yeah, I haven't really seen anything put out by the city on that right now, right, like at this point.
Yeah. And that's also something that's happening in Tampa. And I live in a little city in Tampa Bay, and a lot of the residents don't even know it's a separate city because they just moved there. You know, they go to the University of South Florida. I mean, the city is called Temple Terrace. Great little city, by the
Nice,
way.
nice.
And we have, you know, and people are like, oh, we have a mayor, we have a city council, because they're really more transient. And I see
Yeah,
that changing. I see that, you know, people are spending more time now in their cities, and also looking around and going, where can I make a difference? Where can I bring myself into this whole concept? And that sounds like, you know, it would be invigorating, to a city.
I
So
agree.
that's just a comment. That was not so much a question, I guess.
Oh,
But, you know, I think people are looking also in their leadership, for, you know, and I think maybe that's why sometimes the candidates that give vague messages have, you know, have an audience, is because people are looking for, you know, kind of a hope. People are looking for a reason to get out of bed in the morning, particularly right now being quarantined. And so, you know, I think your message, bringing, you know, focusing on the future and developing that, that would have to be, encouraging to folks that, you know, are looking forward to, you know, joining the workforce again, or you know, establishing a business. Have you seen a lot of local businesses? I mean, downtown go out of business in Coral Springs, like restaurants and merchants, and what would the city be able to do to give them hope?
yeah. Unfortunately, we've had some businesses, including some that have been operating in the city for so many years, just closed down because of the economic issues that have resulted from the pandemic. The city has been doing its best to try to help our small business community. One of the big things that they're doing right now is they're offering, you know, business loans to, you know, businesses to try and stay, you know, up and running. And, you know, they're also trying to promote or encourage, you know, more residents to buy local as a way of keeping businesses open. I mean, I personally, even before I even, you know, decided to run, I always wanted to prioritize our small businesses and, you know, shop local instead of having to go out. And I think that's the right thing to do.
What kinds of shops are there? Like, are you talking about small grocery shops, or, I mean, because what kinds of businesses are affected?
Um, the ones that I've seen have been mostly like restaurants. So there was like a really nice breakfast place that closed down recently. There was like a donut shop that closed down. So it's businesses like that, but you know, many of these businesses are run by residents, and you know, that's just a loss of business that goes with you know, businesses closing down. I worry about, how the city looks when, you hear of a new business, closing down. And so I think that, the city commission needs to do whatever it can to make sure that these businesses stay up and running to the
Well,
best that it can.
one thing that is, I think it's not such a stigma anymore because everybody knows why they're closing down, and so
Mhm.
maybe that's, and people tend to take it very, of course it is very personal, but people tend to mean it as like a reflection on their ability to run a business. And just
Yeah.
like now we're seeing that, the unemployed are not lazy loafers. They are really people who lost their jobs. And I think that maybe that change in consciousness will hopefully maybe pull the community together. Are there strong civic groups in Coral Springs that kind of gather the natives or the restless natives in some kind of a common goal for this, or is it something left up for the politicians to deal with?
So the city commission has been primarily they've been the main actors that have, tried to look for ways to help our small business community. I think the best actor though would be like our Chamber of Commerce. They're the ones that look out for the interests of businesses, and so I'm sure that they would have a lot of ideas to offer, in that respect.
Noor, I got two questions. One from me, and another one from the public. The one from me is, do I know that some cities do have the commissioners assigned by geographical areas in their cities, right?
Yeah,
That's not the case in Cold Springs. So,
it's not. They're all at-large seats, which means that my election will be open to the more than 80,000 residents who are registered to vote in Coral Springs.
okay. And then how many seats are up for election on the third? All the seats, the three commissioners and the mayors, or?
It'll be my seat, which is the open seat, and then it will be seat 5, which is uh, held by an incumbent currently. That seat is also being contested, so it would be 2 total.
So two seats of commissioners up for election in the day of the elections.
Yes,
On
which is November 3rd. Yeah.
Okay, I have another question, and this one is from our public. It says, in Coral Springs, is there a struggle between commissioners as to people who want more real estate development versus those who want more environmental protections? The more people move in the city, the more strains on the resources, waste disposal, water, electricity, wildlife habitat. So what is that struggle happening of those two interests in the
Yeah.
city?
Yeah, and you see that struggle everywhere where you have a real estate and development community.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great thing that we have a thriving developer community in the city. Here's the thing, in politics, and
Mm-hmm.
I almost don't like to say this, but it's kind of true. In politics, everything is a business, and that's especially the case, when it comes to development issues. And I say that because these developers, they're business people and they're smart, and yes, they do look after their interests. But you, as a commissioner, have to look for ways to bridge that gap and come to a compromise that, a dignified compromise that, will not just make developers, happy, but that will also, meet the needs of whatever that development project is supposed to, achieve, and at the same time not create or exacerbate existing problems. So if you look at it from like a business perspective, and you look at it from a negotiation standpoint more specifically, and from a standpoint of compromise, then it'll be easier to solve a lot of these problems that come up as a result of that back and forth that you tend to see between developers and residents. But I think a lot of this is certainly achievable.
Are those developers usually locals, or are they people who are just seeing an opportunity? Because I've lived in Florida cities where it's almost like you come in, you make the cash, and you go home. So I
Yeah.
always thought maybe the developers should be people who are home in Coral Springs. Do you see that, or are those more outside forces that are interested?
No, we definitely do have local developers. Some of
Okay.
them, even live in Coral Springs, um, which I think is great. But yeah, you're right. Developers, they're business people,
Mhm.
and they do look after their interests. But that's where the city commissioners need to step in and, think about how they can work with, our friends in the developer community to, um, achieve that compromise that I was talking about, where everyone is happy and at the same time you're not creating new problems or worsening existing problems in the city. So
Mhm.
that takes a good degree of judgment. We certainly don't want commissioners who are beholden to just developers. We want commissioners who are going to be as objective as possible and make the best decisions on behalf of everyone, which is really what the residents expect of you when they vote for you and when you take office. So you need to really live by that. I
Thank you, Noor.
don't think I've taken any money from developers, by the way.
That's good. Hey, thank you, Noor. Thank you for your time today. And Norma, will you have a last comment and questions for Noor? And Noor also, if you could, after that answer, also do a closing comment. Uh,
Well, no, you do the closing comment. You're the local, but I think it's just I admire anyone who puts themselves out there in today's environment and takes a stand and runs for office, and that's city council, county commission, or city commission, county. Do you still call them county
I'm not
commissioners?
going to hold you to it.
But I admire that because it takes so much, not only time and energy, but it takes almost like a little bit of a thick skin in today's environment there, because social media can be mean and people can be anonymous, and people say things anonymously they probably would never say if they really put their name on it. So I just wanted to congratulate you and for your decision to run, and I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you. And thank you for your time. These are great, candidate forums that are being put out. It's important that people watch these forums, because that's how you're going to learn about the candidates. You can always find me on social media, but, it's important that people tune into these forums because, you know, your vote certainly counts. And, whoever is going to be on that commission in November, hopefully it's me, is going to influence the direction of the city moving forward. And that's especially important, especially, here in Coral Springs, we're in a state of influx. So this is definitely an important race, and I think it's one to watch out for too. And I don't say that just because I'm running. I say that because I mean it.
So thank you, Noor. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Norma, for co-hosting with me. It's always a pleasure being with you in my programs. Elections 2020 here in South Florida. Noor, we are proud of you as a young woman, professional, running for office. As we are proud of so many other candidates that are also legitimately wanting to serve. Uh, uh, Obviously, not looking to enrich themselves when you have positions that are part-time positions that you cannot dedicate the 100% of your time to the city. It is really I see it as a service, another way of true service. I do have some problems with mayors making $250,000 a year, calling that a public service, but and with chauffeur and card for their meals and paid expenses when traveling. So they but when you serve in cities like Coral Springs, the smaller cities, I do see that in all candidates a true spirit to serve and not really looking for to enrich themselves or for their own, but rather for the well-being of the city and the community. Thank you again, Noah. Thank you, Norma. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to everybody. Just
So
follow us. We do have a program, an upcoming program next Sunday. It's not an elections 2020, but a very interesting programs that we are holding every Sunday at 5 p.m. So stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
take care.
Bye bye.